Ice clung to Storm's thick coat, each strand coated in glittering frost. A sharp, piercing sound cut through the storm, reverberating through muscle and bone, awakening instincts long-buried behaviors honed when he was still part of his birth pack. He spent hours beside newborn litters, sharing warmth while the alpha pair hunted. He taught pups to wrestle safely, nudged them away from danger, and carried the occasional troublemaker gently by the scruff. Those instincts hadn't vanished when he left the pack. They had simply lain dormant, waiting for a cry like this. Before we follow Storm on the frozen mountain night where his life and another's would change forever, we invite you to join the Animal Rescue Tales family by subscribing. Your support allows us to share more real stories of extraordinary bonds, proving that love and family know no bounds. Back to the storm. Storm stepped from behind the rocks, plunging into the blizzard. Snow lashed his face, forcing him to keep his head low, following Sin alone. The cry came again, fainter, to his left. He adjusted course, paws sinking deep into the powder. The cold was deadly. Whatever made that sound wouldn't last long. At the base of a fallen pine, he found it. A tiny shape, almost invisible against the snow, trembled violently. Encased in ice, curled into itself, it whimpered faintly. Storm lowered his muzzle carefully. The scent was unfamiliar but unmistakable, young, defenseless, clinging to life. That was enough. Gently, he lifted the fragile bundle in his jaws, taking care not to crush it. It weighed almost nothing. Through the mouth, he felt the rapid flutter of its tiny heart. He turned toward shelter, stopping every few steps to check for signs of life. Once inside the boulder's protection, he set the creature down and began licking it, melting ice to reveal damp, tangled fur. The newborn's eyes were sealed shut. Where was its mother? Lost to the storm? It no longer mattered. Storm curled his massive body around it, pressing it to his chest. His warmth became a living shelter, his body heat over 100 degrees. Slowly, the creature stirred. Its breathing eased. Good. Storm continued licking, warming, stimulating, protecting. Every instinct whispered the same truth. This was a pup. His pup. The storm raged outside, but within Storm's embrace, life returned. By dawn, the baby mewed softly, shifting with renewed strength. The rescue had worked, but survival was only the beginning. In the following days, Storm faced a challenge unlike any he had known. In a pack, there had been a mother, milk, support. Now, there was only him. He chewed small pieces of meat until they were soft, offering them cautiously. At first, the pup refused, but hunger won. Tiny morsels were enough. Storm regurgitated softened meat, blending it with stomach fluids to aid digestion. Slowly, strength returned. By the end of the first week, the baby opened its eyes bright green, alert and curious. They locked onto Storm immediately. In that instant, the bond became unbreakable. The infant recognized him as parent and protector. And Storm knew, deep in his bones, this was his pup. He would die before letting harm come to it. As the days passed, Storm taught the youngster as he would any wolf pup. He brought it out on clear days, letting sunlight warm its fur. Play fighting became lessons, gentle taps from massive paws met with clumsy swats. He demonstrated stalking, creeping through the snow toward pine cones as though they were prey. The little one watched, copying every move. But signs appeared that this pup wasn't like any wolf. It had retractable claws, noticed when it kneaded against his chest. Its ears were rounder, and its howls chirping trills that sounded nothing like a wolf's. Storm noticed, but didn't dwell. Pups were all different. Some were bigger, smaller, quieter, louder. This one was simply unusual. The truth revealed itself at 6 weeks. Storm was feeding on a deer when chirps sounded behind him. He turned and froze. The pup was 10 feet up a pine tree. Storm lunged, panicked, but the tiny climber scaled higher effortlessly. Wolf pups didn't climb trees. His realization hit hard. Claws, ears, sounds, climbing this was no wolf. The kitten looked down, chirping proudly, seeking approval. Memories surfaced long ago. His pack had chased a bobcat that fled exactly like this. He hadn't rescued a wolf pup. He had saved a bobcat kitten, a solitary feline with a different destiny. For a moment, Storm froze. He could leave. Bobcats matured fast. It might survive, but he couldn't. Those green eyes, full of trust, those chirps greeting him after every hunt, curling against his chest at night, following him everywhere. Impossible. Whatever this creature was, it belonged to him. He coaxed the kitten down. After a tense hour, it descended, scrambling headfirst with breathtaking agility. When it rubbed against his legs, chirping happily, Storm's resolve hardened. Species didn't matter. This was family. In the weeks that followed, their bond deepened. Storm became fiercely protective, aware of his adopted son's vulnerability. But he also marveled at the kitten's gifts, stealth, reflexes, and a vertical world he could never access. The kitten, meanwhile, remained convinced he was a wolf. He copied everything, attempting to howl, stalking with feline grace but wolfish confidence. Storm adapted, learning to hunt smaller prey and check the trees, using his unusual partner's strengths. They became a team, unlikely, unnatural, perfect. Night after night, the kitten curled against Storm's chest, kneading with tiny retractable claws, feline habits that once felt strange but now comforted him. By day, it followed him everywhere, on the ground or through the trees, chirping constantly to maintain contact. When Storm rested, the bobcat groomed him meticulously, removing dirt and parasites. And when danger came, the tiny feline puffed up, hissed, and stood between him and the threat as if a 6-pound body could shield a 60-pound wolf. Ridiculous. Illogical. Impossible. And yet it worked. Two predators, never meant to bond, had forged something real. Not despite their differences, but because of them. As winter faded into early spring, the kitten grew into a lean young bobcat. Storm pondered the future. He was still a lone disperser, still searching for territory, still hoping to find a pack or a mate. Where would this strange companion fit? He had no answers. But as he watched the young bobcat practice howling, chirping, and trilling with unwavering determination, Storm knew one thing for certain. Whatever came, they would face it together. This impossible little feline, convinced it was a wolf, had become the center of his world. And nothing could change that. By 3 months, the bobcat had developed a personality both charming and ridiculous. It had no name. Wolves didn't name each other, but if Storm were to choose, it might be something like confusion. Its hunting attempts were comical. Storm relied on endurance. The bobcat tried to keep up, chasing deer for half a minute before collapsing in bewilderment. Ambush came naturally, and over time, instinct took over. The kitten learned to strike from unexpected angles when Storm flushed prey. It wasn't the wolf way, but it worked. The howling never improved. Several times a day, the bobcat would climb a rock, lift its muzzle, and release a sound somewhere between a yodel and a broken siren. It performed it with such seriousness that Storm could only respond with affection. When he answered with a deep howl, the bobcat tried again, looking for approval. Storm pressed his nose gently against the kitten's head. The bobcat glowed with pride, utterly certain it had performed perfectly. Over time, their communication evolved into something uniquely theirs. Storm relied on subtle wolf cues: posture, expressions, small movements, quiet vocalizations. The bobcat replied with a mix of feline instinct and awkwardly learned canine gestures. It chirped and trilled like a bobcat, wagged its stubby tail, wiggling its whole rear in excitement, offered slow affectionate blinks, then licked Storm's muzzle in a wolf greeting. To outsiders, it made no sense. To them, it was perfect. As they grew, the size difference became obvious. Storm neared full maturity, 65 pounds of muscle built for endurance. The bobcat would never reach half that weight, and at 12 pounds, it looked like a kitten pretending to be a full-grown wolf. Yet the bobcat carried itself with complete confidence, believing it was Storm's equal partner, a true packmate. The thought that Storm could swallow it whole never occurred. That confidence led to ridiculous moments. Once, a black bear wandered near their den. Storm positioned himself defensively, placing his body between the bear and their shelter. The bear paused, curious but not aggressive. The bobcat saw this and decided action was needed. It puffed itself up, doubled in size in its own mind, and charged, hissing and chirping with all it had. The bear froze, unsure what to make of the 12-pound creature. After a moment, it lumbered away. The bobcat pranced triumphantly around Storm, chirping, while Storm shook his head and nuzzled his bold, ridiculous child. The lessons went both ways. Storm began caring more for his coat, inspired by the kitten's meticulous grooming. He moved with more thought, pausing, using cover, walking quietly, The kitten's climbing habits reshaped Storm's awareness. Wolves didn't think vertically, but he began using the bobcat as a living lookout. Together, they built a system. The bobcat scouted from the trees, chirping when prey appeared. Storm moved into position. Sometimes the cat flushed birds or startled rabbits. Other times, Storm drove larger prey toward ambush spots chosen by the bobcat. They couldn't explain it, but it worked. Their hunting style was neither wolf nor bobcat. It was something entirely new. Spring arrived, bringing warmth, longer days, abundant prey, and the scent of other wolves. Storm detected fresh markings along familiar trees. 6 or 7 individuals a pack were nearby, possibly searching for territory. His heart raced. This was his chance to join a pack, to reclaim family and belonging. But there was a problem. A 12-pound, chirping, tree, climbing companion. Storm didn't know how the other wolves would respond. There was only one way to find out. 3 days later, the pack emerged. Storm had been marking territory. The bobcat stayed close, sometimes on the ground, sometimes moving through the trees. When the wolves stepped into the open meadow, time seemed to freeze. 6 of them, a confident alpha pair, 2 young adults, 2 awkward yearlings. Their movements were synchronized, unified. Family. Storm's chest tightened. The alpha male approached, calm and confident. Larger and older, but Storm held his ground, signaling respect. He assessed Storm young, strong, healthy, valuable. Then his gaze shifted to the bobcat. The small cat had descended and now sat a short distance away, wide-eyed. Confusion rippled through the alpha's posture. He looked back and forth between Storm and the bobcat. The rest of the pack formed a semicircle, expressions ranging from disbelief to shock. The alpha female's stance asked the first question. "What is that?" Storm tried to communicate, moving slightly toward the bobcat, then back to the pack. "This creature is with me. Part of my life." The pack wasn't hostile, they were bewildered. Wolves understood packmates, prey, and rivals. A wolf traveling with a bobcat fit none of those categories. One yearling stepped back, uneasy. A young adult signaled discomfort. "This is wrong." The alpha male approached cautiously. The bobcat chirped, a friendly greeting in its own language. The alpha froze. The bobcat trotted forward, tail high, rubbing against the alpha's leg and purring. Purely feline, completely irrational by wolf standards. The alpha glanced at his mate. "I have no idea how to handle this." Storm stepped forward, shielding the bobcat. That's when the tension shifted. The alpha female stance sharpened. Her question was clear. "Are you claiming this creature? Part of your group? Do you expect us to accept it?" This was the moment Storm had feared. He could abandon the bobcat. He could leave it behind and regain the pack. All he had to do was step away. Storm's eyes moved from the pack to the bobcat. He had made his decision, a gentle nudge to the tiny feline. Then he squared his shoulders, locking eyes with the alpha, steady, calm, unyielding. The message was clear. The bobcat stays. We are together, both or none. The alpha male's ears flattened. The alpha female lifted her tail. The younger wolves shifted, confused but attentive. Impossible, unnatural, unacceptable. The alpha male gave a sharp, commanding bark. "Think carefully." Storm remained still. He could not move. This small creature had no one else. No protection, only absolute trust. He had rescued it from death, nurtured it, and taught it to survive. That bond went far deeper than instinct or reason. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. The standoff lingered. The pack wanted Storm, but not the complication he carried. Could they separate them? Perhaps, but Storm was ready to fight for the bobcat, and the risk was too high. Could they accept both? The idea flickered and vanished. Wolves had rules. A bobcat did not belong. Finally, the alpha male made his choice. A sharp, decisive call, his last offer. "Join us, alone. Or stay here with your unusual companion. The choice is yours." The meadow fell silent. Even the bobcat seemed to understand the weight of the moment, pressing close to Storm's side, still and alert. Storm inhaled slowly. He glanced at the wolves, their order, unity, the belonging he had longed for. Then he looked at the tiny, improbable creature who had trusted him completely since the day its eyes opened, whose whole world was Storm. At that moment, there was no choice. Storm stepped back, placing himself between the pack and the bobcat. He lowered his head, not in submission, but in absolute certainty. "We stay together. The wolves' disappointment was evident. The alpha male shook his head in disbelief, then turned. One by one, the others followed, casting glances back at Storm and his unlikely companion before vanishing into the forest. They were alone again. The bobcat chirped softly, sensing Storm's lingering sadness without understanding it. Storm nuzzled him, feeling both the weight of his sacrifice and the quiet rightness of his choice. Together, they would endure. Always. The future was uncertain, but they would face it as family, the only family they had. As the kitten groomed Storm's shoulder, purring, the wolf felt some of his burden lift. Together was enough. The following days were challenging. Hunting, marking territory, feeding the bobcat it consumed him. Yet occasionally, distant howls drifted through the mountains. Pack song, connection, belonging. Each echo stirred a hollow ache in his chest. He had none of that. Only wind in the trees and the constant, imperfect chirps of a cat who would never truly howl. The bobcat, nearly 4 months old, remained oblivious to the absence of a true pack. He climbed, experimented with his strange vocalizations, and followed Storm with unwavering devotion. Whenever he sensed Storm's melancholy, he responded with louder purring and more diligent grooming. In his simple view, they were a pack. They were family. 2 was enough. Storm tried to believe it. Most days, he did. Their partnership became seamless. Communication was instinctive. The bobcat was loyal, affectionate, and surprisingly helpful. His unwavering faith brought comfort. Perhaps this was how life was meant to be, just the 2 of them against the world. Then everything changed. It began like any other morning. A successful hunt, a rabbit shared, the bobcat chirping happily. Then Storm caught a scent. Wolves. Several. The pack. Close half a mile, maybe less. Storm froze. Had they reconsidered? The bobcat bristled, scanning the trees. He chirped a question. Storm shook his head gently. Stay calm. I've got this. For 3 days, the wolves lingered at the edges, watching. Storm glimpsed movement at the forest's edge, always just out of reach. They hadn't abandoned him, but neither had they accepted his terms. On the 4th day, chaos erupted. Not howls, but alarmed barks, wolves in danger. Storm didn't hesitate. He ran. The bobcat followed, chirping urgently as they tore across rocky slopes. They arrived at the scene. The alpha pair and 2 adults formed a defensive line, while the yearlings and 3 tiny pups were pinned against a cliff. Advancing on them was a massive brown bear, 600 pounds of fury. Before Storm could react, the bobcat acted. With a shriek of chaos, the small feline charged but veered at the last moment to a nearby tree. The bear, stunned, reared up, just as the bobcat unleashed a storm of chirps, trills, screeches, hisses, and awkward howls. The pack seized the moment. Wolves flanked. Storm joined the line. The bear faced a nightmare, threats on the ground, a screaming menace above. Every time it focused on the wolves, the bobcat dropped lower. Every time it looked at the tree, wolves advanced. For 15 tense minutes, the bear fought confusion rather than enemies. Finally, it retreated with a frustrated roar. The wolves held position, too experienced to pursue needlessly. The bobcat scrambled down and ran to Storm, chirping in a flurry, "Are you okay? Did I help? Are you hurt?" Storm checked him, minor scratches and a bruised ego. Relief washed over him. He licked the bobcat's face, pride and horror mingling. Then he noticed the pack. All 6 adult wolves were watching. Their expressions had shifted from bafflement to respect. The alpha male stepped forward, measured and calculating. He assessed the bobcat. What could it do? It had climbed, scouted, distracted prey, defended pups not its own. The alpha female approached. The bobcat tensed but held firm. She sniffed him carefully, weighing his worth, and then did something extraordinary. She licked his head, not full approval, but acknowledgement. Recognition. This tiny, strange creature had proven itself. Acceptance came not as affection, but pragmatism. The pack wanted Storm, and Storm came with the bobcat. The little feline had demonstrated undeniable value. The alpha male signaled to Storm, "We are reconsidering. If you wish to join, both of you are welcome. Terms have changed." Storm's heart soared. Belonging. Family. And now without sacrifice. He looked at the bobcat, chirping inquisitively, then at the pack, and he understood. No choice was needed. Storm stepped forward, touching noses with the alpha male, the sign of pack acceptance. The bobcat, sensing importance but not protocol, stretched toward the alpha's muzzle. He couldn't reach. Several wolves made sounds like amusement. The alpha lowered his head patiently, allowing the gesture. Awkward, improbable, but it worked. A bobcat had been welcomed into a wolf pack, something nature had never accounted for. In the weeks that followed, the bobcat's skills became invaluable. Night vision, climbing, hunting prowess, and fearlessness all contributed. The pups adored him, attempting to mimic his climbs, tumbling endlessly, while he displayed daring acrobatics. Yearlings wavered between seeing him as strange and impressive. Adults acknowledged him as a quirky but valuable pack member. The bobcat thrived. Finally, he had the pack he believed he needed. Size, claws, teeth, none of it mattered. He joined every activity enthusiastically. When the wolves howled at dawn and dusk, he added his chirping yodel. At first startling, eventually harmonized with the chorus. They were no longer just a wolf pack. They were a wolf pack with a bobcat. That spring, the alpha pair had another litter. The pups showed no fear of the bobcat, playing, attempting to nurse, accepting grooming. He became an essential presence. A generation of wolves grew up believing felines could belong. Strange, unprecedented, effective. Storm watched quietly. A year ago, he had rescued a tiny, freezing kitten. He had never imagined this. Now, he had it all. A pack, a home, a family, and a small orange creature, still convinced it was a wolf. The bobcat slept against Storm's chest, kneading softly, blinking slowly. Now, they were part of something greater. One summer evening, atop their favorite overlook, the pack howled. Layered, imperfect, alive. One sound stood out, a chirping yodel, woven into the chorus. Not wolves alone. Not ordinary. A family built on choice, loyalty, and love. Storm lifted his head. The bobcat purred against his shoulder. Every decision had been right. He had saved a life and in doing so, gained everything worth living for. Family wasn't about being alike. Family was about staying together. And together, they would remain until the mountains themselves turned to dust. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit the bell so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching.